Welcome to Books Arena, the place where powerful ideas become unforgettable journeys. Today, we dive into a book that challenges everything we think we know about success. When we look at people who rise above the rest, Olympic athletes, tech billionaires, music legends, academic prodigies, we often ask, what's their secret? Is it raw talent? Is it hard work? Is it just luck? Outliers offers a different perspective, one that turns the spotlight away from the individual and toward the world around them. It asks not just what successful people are like, but where they come from, what opportunities shaped them, and how their upbringing, culture, and timing made all the difference. This is not a book filled with cliches about working harder. It is about patterns hidden in plain sight. Why are so many elite hockey players born in the first few months of the year? How did Bill Gates gain access to a computer terminal in 1968 when almost no one had even seen one? What role did culture play in airline crashes or mathematical problem solving? The answers are rarely simple, and they are never just personal. Malcolm Gladwell walks us through stories, research, and real-life examples that reveal a deeper truth: success is never solely about individual grit or genius. It is about the opportunity to apply that genius in the right context, with the right support, and at the right time. And so, this audiobook journey is not just about the people who made it to the top, it is about the systems, the histories, and the invisible forces that helped them get there. As you listen, you may begin to see your own life differently. You may discover how your background, your timing, and even your family's culture have already shaped your path and how they will continue to. We often celebrate the finish line, but this story begins long before the race is ever run. In Outliers, success is not just earned, it is enabled. So sit back, relax, and let us explore the real story behind what makes people rise, the untold stories of timing, culture, opportunity, and persistence. This is not a tale of heroes, it is a study of the world that surrounds them. Let us begin. Part 1, The Hidden Pattern of Success. Success often looks like magic from the outside. We see the final result, the polished performance, the prestigious award, the headlines. But rarely do we pause to ask, what came before? What forces, beyond hard work and intelligence, paved the road? Imagine standing in an ice rink in Canada, watching a group of young boys glide across the surface during a youth hockey league tryout. To the untrained eye, they all look alike in skill and size. But a closer look at the roster tells a curious story: most of these boys were born in January, February, or March. A coincidence? Not quite. This is the beginning of what Malcolm Gladwell calls the hidden pattern of success. In Canadian youth hockey, the cut-off date for age group leagues is January 1st. That means a boy born on January 2nd is in the same group as a boy born on December 31st, almost a full year apart. In early childhood, that age gap is enormous. The older boys are slightly bigger, slightly stronger, slightly faster, and they get noticed. They are picked for better teams, get better coaching, more practice, and more opportunities. Over time, that small early advantage snowballs into major success. This is known as the Matthew effect, named after a passage in the Gospel of Matthew, "For unto everyone that hath shall be given." In other words, those who already have advantages will gain more, while those without fall further behind. But it is not just hockey. Look at elite students, chess champions, or math contest winners, and you will find similar patterns. Small early differences, often completely outside one's control, can compound into something extraordinary. And because we are so used to praising the end result, we forget to examine the beginning. This first insight from Outliers challenges the myth of the self-made success. Yes, talent matters. Effort matters even more. But opportunity, often invisible, often random, plays a role we cannot ignore. Take the story of Bill Gates. He is often celebrated as a genius who built Microsoft out of sheer brilliance and drive. But how many people know that Gates attended a private school that was one of the only high schools in America with a computer terminal in the late 1960s? Or that he had access to unlimited programming time when most universities limited it? Or that he had thousands of hours of practice before he even got to college? Gates was talented and hardworking, no one denies that. But he also had extraordinary access to an environment that nurtured that talent long before the rest of the world even understood what computing would become. Now think of the Beatles. Before they were famous, they played in Hamburg, Germany, performing live for 8 hours a night, 7 days a week, for months on end. It was grueling. But that experience gave them the chance to experiment, refine their style, and become the tight, innovative band the world would eventually recognize. What Gladwell points out is this: these stories are not about shortcuts or privilege alone. They are about the accumulation of advantage. Success does not happen in a vacuum. It builds moment by moment, layer by layer, from opportunities that many never even see. Even your birth year can influence your success. In one chapter, Gladwell explores how being born in the early 1950s created a perfect storm of opportunity for computer pioneers like Gates, Steve Jobs, and others. They were just the right age, old enough to be ready when computers first became accessible, but young enough to seize the moment with fresh ambition. This does not mean people born in the wrong month or the wrong year are doomed to fail. What it means is this: we must stop asking only what successful people are like, and start asking where they come from, what their world looked like, who opened doors for them, and what systems supported their rise. If we want a fairer, more honest view of success, we need to zoom out. We need to recognize that behind every high achiever is a story, a context, a history, and often, a series of fortunate events. By doing that, we can stop worshiping outcomes and start building environments where more people can thrive. It is not about lowering the bar. It is about widening the gate. Because the real story of success is not about being special. It is about being in the right place, at the right time, and being ready when opportunity knocks. Part 2, The Matthew Effect. In the world of achievement, success is often portrayed as a fair competition. The idea is simple: if you are smart enough, driven enough, and work hard enough, you will rise. But what if the race starts before the starting gun? What if the field is tilted before the first step is taken? This is where we begin to understand the Matthew effect, a powerful idea that small differences in early advantage grow over time into massive disparities. It is not about cheating or favoritism. It is about how systems reward those who already have a head start, often without anyone even realizing it. Picture this: two children enter kindergarten. One had books read to them every night since they were 2 years old. The other grew up in a home where parents worked multiple jobs and had little time or energy for bedtime stories. By the time both children sit in front of the same alphabet chart in school, they are not starting from the same place, and that early gap, however slight, begins to widen. Teachers spot the child who reads well and label them gifted. That child gets more encouragement, more advanced materials, more confidence. The other child, though just as capable, struggles to catch up and soon believes they are simply not good at reading. The same pattern appears in sports. In Canadian hockey, as we saw earlier, children born in the first few months of the year are physically more mature than those born later. Coaches notice the slightly stronger, faster players who just happen to be older. These players get more ice time, better training, and play in more competitive leagues. By their teens, the gap is massive, though it began with just a few months of age difference. Malcolm Gladwell shows how this kind of compounding advantage shapes not just hockey stars but also academic superstars, business leaders, and artists. Success, he argues, is not simply a reward for talent. It is often the result of cumulative advantage that begins early and builds steadily. One powerful real-world example is the system of tracking in schools, where students are placed into different academic paths based on early assessments. A child who scores well at a young age is placed into an advanced class. That class has better teachers, more resources, and higher expectations. Over the years, those advantages multiply. But what if the initial assessment was skewed by something as trivial as the child being a few months older or having more exposure to books at home? The Matthew effect is not just a theory. It is visible in standardized test scores, college admissions, job opportunities, and even social connections. Those who get early breaks often build momentum. Those who do not are told they simply did not measure up. Now, imagine if we adjusted our systems to account for this. What if youth sports leagues grouped players by birth quarters rather than years? What if schools delayed assessments until children had more equal footing in terms of development? These are not radical changes. They are small shifts that recognize how easily we mistake early advantage for inherent ability. This concept also challenges the myth of the lone genius. When we think of great minds like Mozart, we forget that he was the son of a musician and started composing under his father's guidance at a very young age. His talent was extraordinary, yes, but it was nurtured by access, support, and time. The same goes for professional success. Consider law firms in New York during the 1950s. Many of the most prestigious firms at that time discriminated against Jewish lawyers. So those lawyers formed their own firms and took the kinds of cases that old guard firms refused: proxy fights, Takeovers, corporate restructurings. By the 1980s, those types of cases were the future of law, and the outsiders had become the insiders. Again, it was not just brilliance, it was circumstance meeting preparation. It was being in the right field, at the right moment, with the right kind of experience. And it all began with being excluded, a disadvantage that transformed, over time, into an unexpected edge. What the Matthew effect teaches us is that success does not simply reward the best, it rewards those who got the best start. And unless we become aware of that, we will keep designing systems that reinforce inequality, even while believing they are fair. We must look beyond the scoreboard and ask deeper questions. Who had the chance to practice more? Who had access to better coaching? Who had someone believing in them early on? Success is not a straight line. It is a staircase built over time, and every step matters. Part 3, the 10,000-hour rule. When you see someone excel, whether on a concert stage, a boardroom floor, or a scientific breakthrough, it is tempting to believe that brilliance is just a spark of innate genius. But one of the most transformative ideas from Malcolm Gladwell's Outliers tells us something very different. Success at the highest levels requires not just talent, but a staggering amount of time, about 10,000 hours of focused practice. Take the story of Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart. Often hailed as a child prodigy, Mozart began composing at the age of 5. But his truly remarkable compositions, the ones that made him a legend, came after he had been composing for more than a decade. By the time he produced the work we remember him for, he had already put in thousands of hours of effort. Or consider the Beatles. Before the world knew their name, they were just a young band from Liverpool trying to find their sound. That sound was forged not in a shiny London studio, but in the smoky clubs of Hamburg, Germany. There, they played relentlessly, sometimes 8 hours a day, 7 days a week. By the time Beatlemania hit, they had performed live over 1,200 times, far more than most bands perform in a lifetime. Gladwell's deep dive into the success stories of legends like these reveals a consistent truth: 10,000 hours of deep, deliberate practice is the magic threshold. Not 10 hours, not 1,000, 10,000. That is roughly 3 hours of practice a day for 10 years. Bill Gates. Before Microsoft, he had access to a computer terminal at the age of 13, a rarity in the 1960s. He spent night after night learning to program, not because someone told him to, but because he was obsessed. By the time he dropped out of Harvard, he had already logged thousands of hours writing code. And Gates is not alone. Steve Jobs, Bobby Fischer, Serena Williams, and even fictional characters like Sherlock Holmes, their genius is less about raw talent and more about deep immersion. They lived inside their craft. The 10,000-hour rule is not a rigid formula, it is a symbol. It reminds us that mastery comes from time, consistency, and intensity. You cannot fast forward greatness. There is no app, no shortcut, no hack. What exists instead is the slow accumulation of skill through constant repetition, painful feedback, and tireless refinement. But there is something deeper here. Gladwell is not just saying practice makes perfect. He is showing that even practice itself is shaped by access. Think about it: who has 10,000 hours to spare? A child whose parents can afford private coaching, who has a safe environment to explore their passions, who is encouraged rather than doubted. That child is more likely to accumulate the hours. A young musician in a family that cannot afford instruments or lessons may be just as talented, but the path is far steeper. So, the rule is not just about effort. It is about opportunity to put in the effort. Talent matters, but without the time and space to sharpen it, talent alone will not carry you far. We also learn that not all hours are equal. 10,000 hours of mindless repetition will not produce a master. What matters is deliberate practice, focused, challenging, and guided. It means working on weaknesses, not just playing to strengths. It means pushing the boundaries of discomfort, over and over again. Gladwell gives the example of violinists at the elite Berlin Academy of Music. Researchers divided them into 3 groups: world-class soloists, good performers, and those likely to become music teachers. All had started playing around the same age. But by the time they were 20, the top performers had practiced an average of 10,000 hours. The good performers had logged about 8,000. The future teachers, about 4,000. No one in the top group had simply coasted on talent. And no one in the bottom group had practiced as much as the best. That is the point: effort is not the whole story, but it is the story we often ignore. This idea shifts the spotlight. Instead of asking, why is that person so talented, we begin asking, how much time did they spend getting this good? That question is both humbling and empowering. It reminds us that excellence is not reserved for the chosen few, it is available to anyone who is willing to put in the time. But remember, the opportunity to put in that time is often a gift. A gift of circumstance, of support, of environment. Success, then, is not about genius alone. It is about preparation meeting possibility 10,000 hours at a time. Part 4, The Trouble with Talent. We love to believe in talent. It is comforting, even magical, the idea that some people are simply born with extraordinary gifts. They do not have to try as hard. Things come naturally to them. And if we are not among them, well, then it is not our fault. We were just not born with it. But what if that belief in raw, natural talent is not only misleading but also limiting? In Outliers, Malcolm Gladwell examines a deeper truth, that talent, while real, is often overrated, and worse, it can blind us to the more important ingredients of success: effort, context, and opportunity. Consider the case of Christopher Langan, often called the smartest man in America. His IQ is estimated to be around 195, higher than Einstein's. From a young age, Langan could read before most children could speak. He understood physics without being taught. He was, by every academic measure, a genius. Yet Langan never made it big. He dropped out of college. He spent much of his life doing manual labor, working on farms, handling machinery, living far from the world of intellectual prestige his intelligence seemed to promise. Why? It was not a lack of brain power. It was a lack of what Gladwell calls practical intelligence, the ability to navigate systems, talk to authority figures, and use one's environment to advantage. Langan came from a tough, unstable background. He did not know how to ask for help, challenge unfairness, or advocate for himself in an academic setting. And so, doors closed that he never learned how to open. Now contrast Langan with someone like Robert Oppenheimer, the father of the atomic bomb. Oppenheimer was brilliant, yes, but he also had something else: social savvy. When he got into trouble at Cambridge for a serious offense, he managed to talk his way out. He was raised in a wealthy, cultured family. He was trained not just in knowledge but in confidence, charm, and persuasion. Gladwell is not suggesting that intelligence does not matter, of course it does. But it is not the only thing that matters. And often, it is not even the most important thing. What truly separates those who rise from those who stall is not always raw ability, it is the ability to apply that ability within the right context. Let us go back to school for a moment. Picture two students. One is naturally gifted, a quick learner who barely studies. The other is average but hardworking, spending hours poring over each subject. At first, the gifted student seems ahead. But over time, it is the hardworking student who often wins. Why? Because grit beats gift when the race is long. This is also why we sometimes see kids with perfect SAT scores struggle in real life, while others with average scores go on to build empires. The test may measure raw logic, but it does not measure creativity, resilience, or emotional intelligence. This brings us to a profound insight: privilege can look like talent. If a child grows up in a home filled with books, with parents who take them to museums and engage in thoughtful conversation, they are likely to do well in school. But is that talent or environment? When another child, just as bright, grows up in a chaotic household without that kind of support, their brilliance might never get a chance to shine. And so, we say the first is gifted and the second underperforming. But are they? Gladwell forces us to confront a hard truth: our systems reward polish, not just potential. The way success is measured in grades, test scores, interviews often favors those who have been trained to play the game. Think of a job interview. Two candidates walk in. One is naturally shy, but brilliant. The other is charismatic and articulate but average in skill. Who gets the job? In many cases, the one who sounds more prepared, not the one who is more capable. This is the trouble with talent. We assume it is the whole story. But often, it is a shortcut for explaining success without digging deeper. The truth is, talent is only as valuable as the systems that support it. A gifted artist who never gets to paint, a genius coder who never owns a computer, a brilliant mind silenced by poverty or fear, these are not failures of talent. They are failures of access. Gladwell challenges us to stop asking only, how talented is this person, and to start asking, What chances did they have to use their talent? What help did they get? What barriers were removed? Because behind every outlier, every extraordinary success is a network of advantages, encouragement, timing, mentorship, resources, and yes, the determination to keep going. In the end, talent is only a beginning. It is the soil. But growth requires water, light, care, and time. Without those, even the richest seed will never bloom. Part 5, The Power of Culture. Imagine this: two pilots from different countries are flying planes in identical weather conditions. One lands safely. The other crashes. Both were trained professionals, both had experience, both knew the risks. So, what made the difference? In many cases, according to Malcolm Gladwell, it is not skill or intelligence, it is culture. Culture shapes how we communicate, how we follow authority, how we respond under pressure, and even how we handle emergencies. And when it comes to high-stakes professions like aviation, the consequences of cultural differences can be life or death. Take the example of Korean Air in the 1990s. The airline had one of the worst safety records in the world. Planes were crashing not because of engine failure or poor equipment but because of how the crew interacted in the cockpit. Junior officers were too respectful to challenge captains' decisions, even when something was clearly wrong. They were afraid to speak up, afraid to break protocol, afraid to question someone in authority. This deep-rooted deference, born out of Korean cultural norms, was costing lives. It was not until the airline radically changed its communication training, encouraging more open dialogue, flattening authority, and shifting cultural expectations, that their safety record improved. Today, Korean Air is one of the safest airlines in the world. Not because they hired better pilots, but because they changed the culture inside the cockpit. Gladwell calls this idea of power distance, how much a culture values hierarchy and authority. In cultures with high power distance, subordinates are expected to stay silent, even when they disagree. In low power distance cultures, people are more likely to challenge authority, ask questions, and speak up, which can be critical in crisis situations. And it is not just about planes. This principle applies across industries, from hospitals to boardrooms to classrooms. Culture is not just background noise, it is a force that influences decisions, behavior, and outcomes. Let us consider another example, one that seems far from aviation: math performance in different countries. Why do students in some Asian countries consistently outperform others in international math exams? Is it genetics? Better teachers? Smarter kids? Gladwell digs deeper and finds an unexpected answer: rice farming. Yes, rice farming. Unlike wheat farming in the West, which is seasonal and mechanized, rice farming is a labor-intensive, year-round effort that requires constant attention, planning, and precision. For generations, Asian cultures built their identities around this kind of work, the belief that success is earned through persistence, discipline, and patience. That same mindset, meticulous attention, daily effort, and a belief in hard work, carries into their educational systems. So, a student from a culture shaped by centuries of rice farming may approach a difficult math problem not with anxiety or resignation, but with the mindset of, if I work hard enough, I can figure this out. It is not about being born smart. It is about believing that effort leads to results, and that belief is deeply cultural. Now imagine how this plays out in everyday life. One student gives up after 5 minutes on a difficult problem, convinced they are just not a math person. Another keeps at it for an hour, because they have been raised to believe that persistence matters more than natural ability. Over time, who ends up ahead? This is why culture matters. It teaches us what to value, whether it is obedience or independence, struggle or ease, conformity or questioning. And those values quietly shape our lives, our careers, and even our safety. In Outliers, we learn that success is not just about what we do individually, it is about the norms and beliefs we inherit from the people around us. And sometimes, to become truly great, we have to examine those norms, challenge them, and choose something better. Think about this: what invisible rules guide your daily behavior? Who taught you how to talk to a boss, to solve a problem, to treat failure? Those lessons may seem personal, but they are often cultural scripts passed down without question. And the beauty of culture is that it can evolve. Korean Air changed its cockpit culture. Schools can shift how they talk about talent and effort. Families can teach their children to question with respect, not just obey without thought. If we want to unlock the full potential of individuals, we have to shape the culture around them, one that allows them not only to work, but to thrive. Because in the end, the story of success is not just about one person standing at the top, it is about the web of beliefs, traditions, and values that help them climb. Part 6, The Legacy of Hard Work. There is an old saying that goes, "You reap what you sow." For generations, people have known that consistent, patient effort often brings reward. But what if this belief is not just a motivational phrase, but a deeply ingrained cultural legacy, one that determines how far you go in life? In Outliers, Malcolm Gladwell explores how the legacy of hard work, passed down through generations, influences the way people approach problems, school, and even success itself. Let us take a closer look at students in different parts of the world. On international math tests, students from countries like China and Japan regularly score near the top. Now, many assume this is because those students are simply smarter or their schools are more advanced. But the real reason is far more interesting. It is about mindset. Gladwell introduces a fascinating idea, that the difference is not ability, but attitude, and attitude shaped by history. For hundreds of years, cultures rooted in rice farming required relentless effort. Every part of the rice crop, planting, watering, harvesting, demanded patience, planning, and daily labor. It was not enough to work hard once. You had to work consistently, season after season, year after year. This agricultural legacy shaped how generations of people viewed work. They came to believe that success comes from diligence, not luck. From perseverance, not instant brilliance. This belief did not disappear with modernization. It carried into classrooms. Students raised in these cultures learn from a young age that struggle is not a sign of failure, it is a sign of progress. So when they sit with a difficult math problem, they do not give up. They dig in. Because the lesson their ancestors passed down is simple: effort pays off. Gladwell shares a powerful example. Researchers once gave students a math puzzle, something complex and challenging. But they were not measuring who got the answer right. They were watching how long each student worked before giving up. What they discovered was remarkable. The students who persisted the longest, sometimes up to an hour, were often from cultures with a long tradition of hard work. Their willingness to endure difficulty, to stay with the problem, predicted their eventual success more than IQ or test scores. This challenges a common belief in Western culture that talent is everything, that some people are just naturally gifted while others are not. But in reality, the willingness to keep going, to try and fail and try again, is often the true difference maker. This lesson plays out far beyond academics. Consider entrepreneurs, athletes, artists. The ones who rise are not always the most talented at first. But they are the ones who keep showing up. They improve. They adjust. They outlast the rest. This idea even appears in the lives of some of the most successful people in history. Take Bill Gates, for instance. Yes, he had early access to computers, which was rare at the time. But more importantly, he spent thousands of hours programming, often late into the night. His early success was not just luck, it was long hours of hard work, made possible by his unique environment. Hard work, when applied consistently and with purpose, becomes more than just labor, it becomes craftsmanship. And over time, craftsmanship leads to mastery. But here is the twist: not everyone has the opportunity to work hard in the same way. A student whose parents are struggling financially may have less time to study. A child growing up in chaos may not have the quiet space to concentrate. Gladwell reminds us that while hard work matters, it thrives best when opportunity meets discipline. And that is where society comes in. If we want more people to succeed, we must do more than tell them to work harder. We must build systems that support that effort. We must create environments where persistence is rewarded, where help is available, and where people are taught from a young age that struggle is part of growth, not a sign to stop. So what does this mean for you? It means that your ability to succeed may not lie in being the smartest or the fastest, but in how long you are willing to stay in the game. It means your background, your family stories, and even your cultural values have already shaped the way you approach difficulty. And if you recognize that, you can use it or you can change it. Because the legacy of hard work is not just history, it is fuel. And when combined with passion, direction, and opportunity, it can take you farther than you ever imagined. Part 7, Redefining Success. We have grown up believing that success is simple: work hard, be smart, and never give up. But what if that definition is incomplete? What if the real story of success is far more layered, a mixture of timing, culture, background, and effort? In this final part, we look at how outliers redefines what it means to be successful and what it means to be human. Let us begin with a powerful truth: no one makes it alone. Behind every achievement is a trail of people, chances, and cultural factors that made it possible. Think of the Beatles. They did not just become great by accident. They performed over 1,200 times in Hamburg, Germany, often for 8 hours straight, long before they became famous. It was a unique opportunity to practice, and it shaped them into legends. Or take the story of Chris Langan, a man with an IQ higher than Einstein's. Despite his genius, he struggled to find success. Why? Because raw intelligence was not enough. He lacked the social tools and background needed to navigate the system. Compare that to someone like Robert Oppenheimer, who also faced obstacles but managed to rise because he knew how to speak the language of power and authority. Their stories show that context is just as important as talent. This idea is not meant to downplay personal responsibility. It is meant to expand our understanding. Success is not a solo climb, it is a shared journey. Yes, it takes grit. Yes, it takes skill. But it also takes doors being open at the right time and someone showing you how to walk through them. So how do we redefine success? First, we stop pretending it is purely about merit. We recognize that where and when you are born, the support you receive, and even your cultural inheritance, all of it matters. A child born into poverty may have all the talent in the world, but without access to education or safety or mentorship, their light may never fully shine. And yet, give them just one opportunity, one open door, and everything can change. Second, we reframe how we view effort. In a culture obsessed with natural talent, we must return to the truth: greatness is grown, not gifted. Those 10,000 hours. They do not happen by magic. They happen through sacrifice, repetition, and support. If we celebrate the result but ignore the path, we miss the whole story. Third, we shift from judgment to empathy. When someone falls behind, we do not say, "They did not try hard enough." We ask, "Did they have the same chances?" Because the playing field is not equal, and success does not emerge in a vacuum. It grows from soil that is often richer for some than others. And finally, we begin to notice the outliers all around us, not just the billionaires or the prodigies, but the quiet success stories. The immigrant who builds a future from nothing. The student who works after school and still manages to top the class. The teacher who sees potential in a kid that no one else believed in. These are the people redefining success every day. Gladwell's message is not just about understanding the winners of the world. It is about changing how we help more people become winners, not by lowering the standards, but by raising the opportunities. So if you are listening and wondering whether you can rise, remember this: your story is still being written. Yes, some paths are smoother than others. But knowing the factors behind success allows you to work smarter, seek help more intentionally, and create your own turning points. You are not limited by where you started. But your journey will be shaped by what you believe is possible and what you do to make it happen. In the end, being an outlier is not about being born extraordinary. It is about what happens when potential meets possibility, when effort meets environment, and when timing meets preparation. Redefining success means seeing the full picture. And once you do, you realize greatness is not an accident. It is a story. A story built on choices, chances, and the courage to continue. Success is often viewed as a mystery, a rare spark of brilliance, a product of genius, or a stroke of luck. But the real story, as we have seen, is deeper and more human. Behind every outlier is a chain of unseen influences: family, culture, timing, opportunities, and effort. No one becomes great in isolation. What outliers teaches us is not to envy the successful, but to understand them. To realize that their path was shaped by more than just their choices. And once we understand that, we can begin to shape our own paths with more clarity, compassion, and determination. Whether you are just starting out or somewhere in the middle of your journey, remember this: the road to success is not always fair, but it is always possible. With grit, self-awareness, and the right support, you can tilt the odds in your favor. Thank you for listening to Outliers on Books Arena. Let this not be the end of a story, but the start of your own. Because the world needs more outliers, and one of them might just be you.